Welcome to the Develop Yourself podcast, where we teach you everything you need to land your first job as a software developer by learning to develop yourself, your skills, your network, and more. I'm Brian, your host. If you're listening to this on the day that it's released, it's Thanksgiving. And one thing that I'm thankful for, if I can get corny for just a minute here before I dive into some services, some things I think you should spend your hard-earned money on to help you accelerate your path to web developer or software engineer faster. Just really briefly, I want to give thanks to you for listening to this. Seriously, this is something I never in my wildest dreams really thought I'd be doing a podcast. I don't even really listen to podcasts, if I'm being completely honest. When I purchased Parsity, I used to work for Parsity for the previous owner. I really liked what he was doing. I loved the program. I loved the whole mission. And when I bought it from him, when I purchased it, it came with the podcast, which I took over, and I was really apprehensive about it at first. I thought, I don't know about this. I've done pretty well writing online. I've done pretty well with videos, but I didn't know how me speaking into a mic was going to come across to people. But I've received so much good feedback from people, and I really appreciate it. And finally, I have access to the Spotify creators view of this podcast. So I can finally respond to comments and things like that. So if you've left a comment or something, don't think I'm ignoring you on purpose. I just literally didn't have access until about a week ago. So if you're leaving comments, I really appreciate it. And I will be responding to those comments. And if there's a poll that I leave on there, please vote, because it helps me understand what are some things that I should be speaking about that are going to help you specifically next. So thank you so much for listening. Let's get into a few services, courses, materials that I've bought, that I've personally used, that I would recommend to you. I am not sponsored by any of these people. Well, that's not true, actually. I am sponsored by one of them, which I will let you know. But I'm not leaving any links or any affiliate links here, because I honestly don't want to dilute the content of this show by ever doing something that leads into some sort of promotion. In fact, plenty of people actually ask to promote on the show, and I have just been super apprehensive and against that in general. I sell one thing on this show, which is Parsity, because that's the business I own, and I can stand behind that. I'm not trying to sell anybody else's things. If you're listening to this and you think you can line my pockets with money for shouting out your terrible program, think again. So let's get to it. I know Black Friday is going to be tomorrow, and there's going to be all sorts of great deals out there. Here are a few things I think you should actually buy, which are worth your time. Number one, Codecademy. I mean, this is a no-brainer. If you are learning to code, like barely at the beginning, and you just want to know how to code, go ahead and splurge on Codecademy and do the HTML, CSS tracks, the JavaScript track, and then take the training wheels off and then go do something else, like build a small application, learn React, maybe somewhere else, maybe on Codecademy. I can't speak directly to Codecademy's React offering, but I can speak directly to their Git, GitHub, HTML, CSS, and their JavaScript tracks, which I think are excellent. I think it's a really good introduction to coding. It was my introduction to coding almost 12 years ago, and it continues to be one of my favorite platforms for when you have zero clue about how to code and you don't even know where to begin. That's where you begin. Next up is a service that skyrocketed in popularity recently, and a few students at Parsity actually recommended I look into it, Scrimba. I love this one a lot. In fact, if you want to learn React, if you're looking to learn beyond the basics or even maybe some of the basics, this is a great alternative to Codecademy. I would probably use these in tandem, or maybe I might choose Scrimba over Codecademy. I'm not sure. They both are very similar. They have these integrated IDEs, which I'm not a huge fan of, if I'm being honest. Basically, you write code within the web app. You don't take it to your own machine, which I think is a critically important step when you're learning how to code. It's great to start on these platforms. Like, it's really cool to get something started and to kind of gamify the process. But then the most important step is getting away from that gamification and writing it in your own code editor. So I like both these services a lot. Scrimba is more of the new competitor, new kid on the block, really cool. And I really enjoy the way they've done it. I actually spoke with one of the owners / founders, super cool dude, and got a really good intention with what they're doing. So I can't recommend them enough. I think it's an awesome service. Next up, here's a very, very specific course on Udemy that I would buy, that I've bought years ago. Back when people wanted to learn data structures and algorithms, like 7, 8, 9 years ago, there was nothing for the JavaScript crowd, like nothing. You couldn't find how to do data structures and algorithms in JavaScript until I found Colt Steele, Colte, Steele, Colt Steele. He has an amazing way of teaching. He taught me data structures and algorithms in a way that stuck. And that really helped me out. 'Cause I'm like, oh, here's how you do a tree in JavaScript. Oh, this is how you do a stack or a queue or a linked list. Here's how recursion works under the hood with JavaScript. It really just illuminated a lot of concepts that I'd heard about but didn't really get. And did it in such a practical way with really good examples. A lot of my mental models are from that exact course. So can't recommend him enough either. Excellent teacher. In fact, Colt Steele, if anybody knows him, tell him to hit me up. I want to get him on this show. He was too smart. What an awesome guy for making that thing years ago. And so far ahead of the curve. He apparently has a ton of other courses now. All sorts of stuff from SQL to Git and GitHub. I can't speak to any of those particularly. But if it's anything as good, if it's nearly as good as his DSA stuff, I would buy it in a heartbeat. And it's like $20. So it's like, even if it sucks, whatever. Okay, so the next few things I'm going to suggest are not really for like the super new coder crowd. These are more things for once you get that first job and you're trying to ace your interview, or you need to know beyond the basics of coding at some point, right? Because you do need to go beyond the basics pretty quickly. The basics are hard to come by and they take a long time to acquire. If you go to a college, it'll take you 4 years, then maybe another year of doing whatever freelancing or going to a boot camp. You go to a boot camp, it could take 6 to 12 months. And then you get a job and you say, cool, I barely know enough to get hired and I'm barely able to keep up. That's okay. That was the goal, right? You got the first job. That's where the real learning begins. But then you say, well, how do I get to the next job? How do I go past what I am now? How do I get past this junior title and into mid-level and into senior? And how do I do well in interviews? Because as you know, as you should from listening to this show, that interviewing is the highest paid skill you can have as a software developer, like it or not. I don't care about all the other stuff you know. When you go into that room or you're on that Zoom screen, you are being judged in a 30-minute to an hour-long block on the knowledge that you can show at that point. And you could have $200,000, $150,000, $300,000, $500,000 on the line from this one 30-minute call or this hour call or this 6-hour-long marathon session. Can you imagine the stakes being that high? This is like the all-time carnival game, right? This is like the carnival game with the highest stakes. So you don't want to walk in there half-cocked. You don't want to walk in there just freestyling it. And if you do want to study, here are some things I would do. I would buy Algo Expert. It is hands down one of my favorite places to learn data structures and algorithms. It's better than LeetCode, in my opinion. I bought LeetCode Premium, and then I bought algoexpert.io. They have a front-end track, and they have the data structures and algorithms track, and they even have a machine learning track. I bought both front-end data structures and the machine learning. I have not done the machine learning course yet, but I'm going to. More on that later because I have a lot to say about the future of software engineering as it relates to data and what Parsity is going to be doing in the future to make sure we are riding that wave into the future. But Algo Expert is a really cool one because what about the front-end interview? When you go to an interview, it's very unlikely you're going to get data structures and algorithms unless you're going for some of the big top tech companies. In that case, you absolutely have to know them and you have to know them well. But for the other 99% of companies, it's a mixed bag. You're going to get something more like, hey, build me a front-end component with React that fetches some data from an API, or hey, build me a custom hook, or hey, do this JavaScript trivia thing. And how do you study for that kind of stuff? It's not naturally that you're going to come against this in your day-to-day work. So Algo Expert was really smart. They saw these kinds of questions that came up all the time, like how do you do something with recursion in JavaScript, or how do you leverage closure? All these kind of weird trivial things that you just normally would never do. And they got them and they productized them into a really cool way to practice these kinds of challenges that are really prevalent on the interview circuit. Next up is a service. I bought this one years ago. I bought this when it was super new and they actually grandfathered me into this price. So now I never have to pay for it ever again. And they do sponsor me, but I was a fan of them and I was buying their service long before this. It's codecrafters.io. This is so cool. It's like building really complex software from scratch, and they give you a set of tests that you have to pass, and it's all via GitHub. So you upload or you commit some code, you push it, and then some automated tests run, and they say whether or not your code is passed. It is the coolest thing I've seen out there. In fact, I have a program that I kind of mimicked that was for the front-end full-stack JavaScript crowd called javascriptprosapp.com. It's free for all Parsity students. Also 50% off, by the way, too. I'm also selling that 50% off for the Black Friday sale. It's 50% off through Monday. Codecrafters inspired the JavaScript Pros app because I thought, what a cool way to learn. Because what I hate doing is sitting through really long videos at this stage in my career. I don't want to really watch any videos at all. What I want to do is get my hands immediately on some code, try to make some tests pass so I can understand how to write the code in real time. Because I don't want to watch somebody else code for like 2 hours. I just cannot do that anymore. And I get that that's what you might need when you're really early on, or maybe you just are a really visual learner. In that case, Codecrafters and JavaScript Pros app are probably not the thing you want to do. But if you want to get like a half working app that's like, here's some examples of how this kind of works. Now you go further from here. Here's a test case, make it pass. And you know that your tests work, or you know that your code works when the tests pass. So for example, it'll give you like, make this clone of SQL. And you're like, where do I even start? And they give you some boilerplate and say, well, here's kind of how it works, right? But what happens when somebody does a select statement? So how do you extend the code to make this work? So it gives you a little nugget, a little foothold, and then you keep extending it and extending it and extending it and extending it. And it really forces you to learn along the way. There's no videos. There's no long drawn out essays or anything like that. It's just, hey, make some tests pass. Here's some examples. Here's stuff to do. So if you're really, really early in your career, absolutely don't get this. It's going to be way overwhelming. If you're mid-level, senior, this is a really good investment. Codecrafters, or honestly, JavaScriptProsApp.com. That is my tool, the thing that I created that has like 30 plus challenges, including an AWS Foundation mini course in there. Also gives you access to Slack and to talk to me as well, which is actually, in my opinion, well worth the price. It's like for a fraction of what Codecrafters costs, and it's built strictly for the JavaScript crowd. So if you're a JavaScript developer, you're trying to get deeper into JavaScript, TypeScript, unit testing, Lambdas, and things like that, great purchase. But hey, I'm a little bit biased, right? I did kind of make it. So maybe take my recommendation with a grain of salt. Another one of my big all-time favorites, Byte Go, system design. System design is notoriously difficult. And the moment you move past mid-level or even past junior, it becomes this requirement out of nowhere in your interviews. You're like, wait, what? How would you design Spotify? And they expect you to know how to architect these major pieces of a complex application. Like, how would you build Spotify? How would you build a real-time analytics tracker? How would you build a rate limiter? And you're thinking, what? What are these questions? Why would I need to know how to do this? And I get the spirit of these questions is to understand how you would like think through a really complex problem, but they're looking for you to say certain pieces of technology, like caching layers, the CAP theorem, NoSQL versus SQL databases. When do you use one over the other? Asynchronous message processing. When would that be appropriate to use versus an API or something like that? So all this jargon that I'm probably spitting at you that you're already thinking, wait, what? Don't worry. I'm going to do an episode on system design because I think it's really interesting, one, but it's also really difficult to learn because how often is it that you as a developer, whether you're front end, full stack, or back end, are architecting an entire system from scratch? It's this weird cerebral exercise that is so conceptual that it doesn't even really make sense when you're talking through it. But like just knowing the basics of like, how is a system design? Like what differences are in a real-time system? Like when you have real-time data like stocks or messages versus something like an e-commerce app. Like those require way different types of architectures, but why is that important? What are the different components that would make up those different types of architectures? And how would you compose them? It gives you a better sense of all the types of technology we use on a day-to-day basis. And also, honestly, it's just going to help you in your interviews because when you get past junior, those are going to really be the things that determine your seniority. And now me as an engineering manager, most of the interviews that I go into are mostly around system design, and they're much less about how well I can code my way out of a paper bag or write a linked list from scratch, for example. Oh, and very lastly, there's one book that I would recommend that everybody read, no matter what skill level you are at. And it is called The Phoenix Project. This is one of the best books about software I've ever read because it's written in the style of a novel. So you read about this dude that's trying to go back and save this company that has this really archaic software development process. And you see all the pitfalls and all the things he does to try to fix it and all the pushback and how it's like ruining his life and he's trying to like save the company. It's really cool and it's a great book and it shows you, oh, here's why we do certain things in software. Here's why we do continuous integration and continuous deployment. What is continuous integration and continuous deployment?
how does a good software team run? What are some good processes versus what are some bad processes? You could read this book and know zero about software, and you'd probably still find it a pretty interesting read. Or you could know a ton about software and find that this will actually give you some ideas about how you could and should be working within a large organization or within just any software team in general. It's really good practices, and I know that a lot of companies used to make it like required reading. Super good book. So the Phoenix Project is not really dry stuff. Like Kyle Simpson has really excellent books on JavaScript, and I would recommend those to anybody as well. You Don't Know JavaScript. That series of books really changed the way that I write JavaScript. Seriously, it made the most impact on the way that I write JavaScript on a daily basis. But they're not fun reads. They're not going to be something that you read at night before you go to bed. The Phoenix Project, on the other hand, you would read before you go to bed. So hope that's helpful. Ton of stuff for you to check out. And I know that Black Friday has all these different things that are thrown in your inboxes and your emails and all that stuff. So check one or all those things out that made significant impact to me. And I think they can for you as well. Again, JavaScript Pros app, the only one that I own, javascriptprosapp.com, on sale. I think it's like $44 or something like that till Monday. Crazy price that I will not be offering again for the foreseeable future. I hope you had a wonderful Turkey Day, or hope you're going to have a wonderful day if you're listening to this at the time it drops. And I'll see you next week. And by the way, please let me know, what should I be talking about on the show next? I got all sorts of cool ideas, but I always want to know from you. If you've listened to this point, you're one of the top 10% of users. I see that on my Spotify metrics, that if you're one of the people listening at this point, it means you're a very engaged listener, and you're the exact person that I want to hear from. So don't let me down. Tell me, what should I talk about? Have a great Thanksgiving. Talk to you later. Bye.
That'll do it for today's episode of the Develop Yourself podcast. If you're serious about switching careers and becoming a software developer and building complex software and want to work directly with me and my team, go to Parsity.io. And if you want more information, feel free to schedule a chat by just clicking the link in the show notes. See you next week.